Her fiancé cheated with the maid of honor right after the wedding reception. Yeah, you heard that right. Let me take you from the very beginning. Her name was Victoria. She and her fiancé, Daniel, had been together for 5 years. They had planned a big, beautiful wedding, the kind she had dreamed about since she was a little girl. The ceremony was perfect. Victoria walked down the aisle in a stunning white dress. Daniel looked at her with tears in his eyes, and everyone said it was the most beautiful wedding they had ever seen. Victoria's best friend since childhood, Sophia, was the maid of honor. Sophia had been by her side through everything, helping choose the dress, planning the bachelorette party, and standing next to her during the vows. Victoria trusted her completely. The reception was magical. The garden was lit with thousands of string lights. There was live music, laughter, dancing, and toasts to the happy couple. Victoria felt like she was living in a fairy tale. Daniel danced with her, kissed her in front of everyone, and whispered how much he loved her. Sophia was everywhere, helping with the guests, making sure everything ran smoothly, and smiling brightly in all the photos. Around midnight, Victoria started feeling very tired. The day had been long and emotional. She told Daniel she needed to go up to the bridal suite for a few minutes to rest and fix her makeup. He kissed her on the forehead and said he would stay with the guests and join her soon. Victoria quietly opened the door to the bridal suite. The room was dimly lit. At first, she thought it was empty. Then, she heard soft sounds. She pushed the door open a little more. There, on the couch where she had left her wedding bouquet, were her husband and her maid of honor. Daniel had Sophia pressed against the cushions. Her bridesmaid dress was pulled up. They were kissing passionately. Daniel's hands were under her dress. Sophia was moaning his name quietly, her fingers in his hair. They had waited only a few hours after the wedding ceremony to betray her. Victoria stood frozen in the doorway, still in her wedding dress. Sophia saw her first. Her eyes widened in horror. Daniel turned around and his face went completely white. For a few seconds, no one moved. Then Sophia started crying and saying, "Victoria, please. It's not what it looks like. We were drunk. It just happened." Daniel tried to stand up and said, "Baby, wait. Let me explain. This doesn't mean anything." Victoria didn't scream. She didn't cry. She simply looked at both of them and whispered one sentence. "On our wedding night." But what happened in the minutes and hours after that moment, that was when the real nightmare began. Because the wedding reception was still going on downstairs, the guests were still celebrating. The photographer was still taking pictures, and both Daniel and Sophia immediately started trying to convince her that it was just a stupid, drunken mistake, and that she should not ruin the most important day of their lives. But what happened in the minutes and hours after that moment, that was when the real nightmare began. Victoria stood in the doorway of the bridal suite, still wearing her white wedding dress, the veil slightly crooked from the long day. The music from the reception could be heard faintly from downstairs. Guests were laughing, clinking glasses, celebrating what was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. Daniel quickly pulled away from Sophia and tried to stand up, his face pale. Sophia grabbed the sheet to cover herself, her eyes wide with panic. For a few seconds, the only sound was the distant music and their heavy breathing. Daniel spoke first, his voice shaking. "Victoria, please, this is not what it looks like. We were both drunk. The emotions of the day got to us. It was a stupid, drunken mistake. It meant nothing." Sophia started crying immediately, her voice breaking. "Vika, you're my best friend. I love you. I would never hurt you on purpose. It just happened. We were both so overwhelmed. Please don't make this bigger than it is. This is your wedding night." They were both looking at her with the same desperate expression, as if she was the one who needed to be reasonable. Victoria felt the room spinning. She was still holding the small bouquet she had carried upstairs. She looked at the two people she trusted most in the world and whispered, "On my wedding night?" Daniel tried to step closer. but Victoria moved back. He started talking faster, almost pleading. Baby, listen to me. The reception is still going on. Everyone is downstairs waiting for us. Our parents, our friends, they're all celebrating. Don't ruin the most important day of our lives over one stupid mistake. We can fix this. We can go downstairs, smile for the photos, and deal with this tomorrow when we're sober. Sophia nodded through her tears. He's right. Everyone is so happy right now. If you make a scene, it will destroy the night for everyone. We can talk about this later. I'll leave right now if you want. Just please, don't cancel the wedding. They were already trying to manage the situation, not because they were sorry, but because the party was still happening and they didn't want the guests to know. Victoria felt a wave of nausea. She looked at her husband in his wedding suit and her best friend in the bridesmaid dress and realized that the fairy tale she had believed in for 5 years had just shattered in front of her eyes. Downstairs, the music continued. Someone announced that the bride and groom would be back soon for the cake cutting. Guests were cheering and taking photos. Daniel gently touched her arm and said softly, "Come on, love. Let's go back down. We can smile for a few more hours. For our families, for the memories. We'll talk about everything when we get to the hotel tonight. I promise," Sophia added, wiping her tears. "I'll stay in the background. No one has to know. This can stay between us three. Please, Vic, don't destroy the night. Everyone worked so hard to make perfect for you." Victoria looked at them, her husband and her maid of honor, and felt something inside her go very still. She realized they were more worried about the party and their image than about the pain they had just caused her. She took a slow breath and said quietly, "I need a moment alone." Then she walked out of the suite, leaving them standing there in silence. But the hardest part was still ahead. Because downstairs, the entire wedding reception was in full swing. The guests were waiting for the bride and groom to cut the cake and dance the first dance as a married couple. And both Daniel and Sophia were already preparing to act as if nothing had happened, while Victoria had to decide, in the next few minutes, whether she would smile for the cameras or tell the truth in front of everyone. But the hardest part was still ahead. Victoria stood in the quiet hallway outside the bridal suite, her white dress suddenly feeling too heavy. The music from the reception downstairs was still playing. Guests were laughing, clapping, waiting for the bride and groom to return for the cake cutting and the first dance. She could hear Daniel and Sophia whispering urgently behind the door. They were already trying to decide what to do next. Daniel's voice was low. "We have to go back down. Everyone is waiting. We can't let this ruin the night." Sophia answered quickly, "Just act normal. We'll talk to her later. She's emotional right now." Victoria closed her eyes. For a moment, she was supposed to walk back into that room as the happy bride, smile for the photos, cut the cake, dance with her new husband in front of 150 guests who had come to celebrate their love. Instead, she felt like she was standing at the edge of a cliff. She took a deep breath, wiped a single tear that had escaped, and walked downstairs. When she reappeared in the garden, the guests cheered. Daniel was already there, smiling brightly, acting as if nothing had happened. He walked over to her, took her hand, and kissed her cheek for the cameras. Sophia followed a minute later, her bridesmaid dress perfectly adjusted, smiling like the perfect best friend. The DJ announced the cake cutting. Victoria and Daniel stood in front of the three-tiered cake, knives in hand, smiling for the photos. Daniel whispered in her ear while they posed, "Please, just get through tonight. We'll talk later. Don't ruin this for everyone." Sophia stood right beside them, holding the bouquet, smiling for the guests, as if she hadn't just been in bed with the groom. Victoria smiled through it all. She cut the cake. She fed Daniel a piece. She danced the first dance with him while the guests clapped and took videos. No one noticed that her smile never reached her eyes. The rest of the reception felt like a dream she couldn't wake up from. Guests kept coming up to congratulate them. Her mother hugged her and said how beautiful she looked. Her father raised a toast to the perfect couple. Every time Victoria looked at Daniel, she saw him laughing with guests, playing the role of the happy husband. Every time she looked at Sophia, she saw her best friend, smiling and dancing, acting as if nothing had changed. At one point, during a slow song, Daniel pulled her close and whispered, "I love you. This is our night. Don't let one stupid mistake ruin it." Victoria didn't answer. She just kept smiling for the cameras. But the breaking point came later that night, after the last guest had left, and they were finally alone in the bridal suite, because that's when Daniel closed the door, turned to her, and said the words that made everything clear. "Look, I know you're upset, but we're married now. We have the rest of our lives to work through this. Sophia is your best friend. She's family. We can all move past this. No one else ever needs to know what happened tonight." He said it so calmly, so confidently, as if the decision had already been made for her. But the breaking point came later that night, after the last guest had left, and they were finally alone in the bridal suite. Daniel closed the door, turned to her, and spoke with the calm confidence of someone who believed the matter was already settled. "Look, I know you're upset, but we're married now. We have the rest of our lives to work through this. Sophia is your best friend. She's family. We can all move past this. No one else ever needs to know what happened tonight." He even smiled a little, as if he was offering her a reasonable solution. Victoria stood in the middle of the bridal suite in her wedding dress, the veil still pinned in her hair. She looked at the man she had just married a few hours earlier, and felt something inside her finally break, not with anger, but with clarity. She took off her veil, folded it carefully, and placed it on the table. Then she looked him straight in the eyes and said quietly but firmly, "I want an annulment. I'm leaving tonight, and I will never forgive either of you for what you did on the day that was supposed to be the happiest of my life." Daniel's face changed instantly. He tried to step closer, his voice rising. "Victoria, wait. You're tired. You're emotional. We just got married in front of everyone. You can't throw it all away over one mistake. Think about our families. Think about the photos. Think about the life we planned." Victoria simply shook her head. She took off her wedding ring and placed it on the table next to the veil. "I already thought about it. One, choose myself." She packed a small bag with only the essentials, called a taxi, and left the bridal suite that same night. Daniel followed her to the car, still in his wedding suit, begging her not to leave. Sophia stood on the balcony watching silently, her face pale. The next morning, the news spread like wildfire. Victoria sent a short message to both families and close friends. "The marriage has been annulled. There are reasons I cannot discuss right now. I ask for privacy and respect during this time." Her mother and Daniel's family were shocked. Some tried to convince her to reconsider for the sake of the marriage. Others blamed her for ruining the perfect wedding. But Victoria did not explain. She did not defend herself. She simply moved forward. In the following months, she went through the annulment process quietly. She moved to a new city. She changed her number. She started therapy and slowly rebuilt her life, piece by piece. Daniel and Sophia tried to reach her many times. They sent letters, flowers, messages through mutual friends. They told everyone that Victoria had panicked on her wedding night and that they were devastated but willing to forgive her. Victoria never replied. She kept only one photo from the wedding, the one of her walking down the aisle alone, before she said, "I do." She looked at it sometimes as a reminder of the woman she was before she learned the truth. So that's the full story. Every single painful, shocking, heartbreaking detail. A woman wrote to me and asked me to tell her story. On the night of her wedding, she caught her new husband with her maid of honor. They tried to convince her to stay silent, to pretend everything was fine, to continue the marriage for the sake of appearances. But she chose herself. She left that same night. She annulled the marriage. She walked away from the fairy tale and started building her own life. You can send your story to my email anytime, and I promise I'll tell it in the next episodes. Subscribe to the channel, drop a like on this video, and let the truth spread everywhere.